Two police officers in crisp blue uniforms pulled up to my garage in their patrol car. I stayed back under the lift, wiping grease off my hands as I watched them carefully, trying to gauge their demeanor. It struck me as strange how upbeat they seemed at first, but their expressions darkened as they got closer. Once they confirmed who I was, they got straight to the point. Something had happened to my wife, Emily. She was in the hospital, but they wouldn't say much more than that. My first instinct was to drop everything and go to her, but before I could move, they stopped me. They wanted to know where I'd been for the last 3 hours. I told them the truth. I had been at the garage all day. If they needed proof, they could ask my mechanics, Tom and Jerry. The only time I had stepped out was for about 10 minutes, just after 11 a.m., to grab coffee for the crew. One officer pulled Tom and Jerry aside to verify my story, while the other jotted down the name of the coffee shop I had visited. Then he asked to see my truck. Without hesitation, I led him outside. He gave it a thorough inspection, checking every inch before finally letting me leave for the hospital. When I arrived, my pulse pounded in my ears as a staff member explained Emily's condition. Severe blood loss, emergency surgery, multiple transfusions. The weight of it all hit me like a freight train. Then I noticed something odd. The doctor delivering the grim news had a strange half-smile, something that felt completely out of place. It made me uneasy. But before I could dwell on it, the same two officers showed up again, clearly not finished with their questions. This time, we sat in the hospital cafeteria, nursing cups of coffee as they pried into my marriage. I told them Emily and I had been together for 8 years. She was a sharp, ambitious attorney who had always wanted kids but insisted on establishing her career first. A month ago, she finally made the leap. She quit her job, planning to take a break before we started a family. One last stretch of independence before committing to motherhood. Then, out of nowhere, they hit me with a question that caught me off guard. "What can you tell us about Mark Carter?" I frowned, shaking my head. "I don't know anyone by that name." The officers exchanged a quick glance but gave me nothing in return. Without another word, they walked away. Later that night, trusting Tom and Jerry to lock up the garage, I drove home, only to find my house crawling with forensic investigators and a detective. The detective introduced himself, gave me a brief rundown of what they knew so far, then started asking the same questions the officers had. But this time there was one more. "There's a small amount of blood in the downstairs bathroom. Any idea how it got there?" I shook my head. "Not a clue." Then I locked eyes with him, my voice steady. "Am I a suspect?" He let out a slow breath, offering something between reassurance and evasion. "We have multiple leads. My colleague is speaking with Mrs. Carter." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Mark Carter. Who the hell was Mark Carter? I must have looked as lost as I felt because the detective hesitated before muttering an apology. "I can't share that information," and with that they left. But I was drowning in confusion. Upstairs, I stood in my bedroom, staring at everything like I was seeing it for the first time. My mind drifted back to that morning. 10 a.m. at work, lost in thought. Closeness, connection, nothing out of the ordinary. They say men think about intimacy an average of 67 times per waking hour. After nearly a month of next to nothing, I was definitely above that average. Emily had changed. The mood swings, the exhaustion, the way she suddenly seemed uninterested. I figured she was just overwhelmed by all the changes in her life. Quitting her job, preparing for motherhood. I never pushed. I understood that everything was shifting for her. But that morning, I had made up my mind. I wanted to bring back the passion, the spontaneity. I was going to surprise her. I let Tom and Jerry know I'd be stepping out for a while, but before I could leave, Jerry asked if I could take a quick test drive in a car he'd just serviced. I agreed, took it for a spin, then finally headed home. The excitement drained from me the second I pulled into the driveway. A car I didn't recognize was parked right there. A visitor. My first instinct was irritation, but I still held on to hope. Maybe it was just a friend. Maybe they wouldn't stay long. I stepped inside and called out, "Emily?" Silence. And then I heard it. A sound no husband should ever have to hear. A chill ran through me, my entire body locking up. The unmistakable sounds of pleasure drifted down from our bedroom. My hand moved on its own, reaching for my phone. At the garage, I always recorded video footage whenever clients brought in their cars, a habit to protect against false damage claims. And right then, that same instinct kicked in. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs, hit record, and nudged the door open just enough to see inside. Emily, a man I had never seen before. Our bed. A raw, animalistic rage surged through me, white-hot and all-consuming. I could have ended that man's life in an instant. But instead, I backed away, pressing myself against the hallway wall, barely able to breathe. They had no idea I was there. They were completely lost in each other. I had no idea how long I sat there, frozen by betrayal. But eventually, the sounds changed. The moans and gasps faded, replaced by quiet conversation. That was somehow worse. I couldn't stay. Moving as silently as I could, I slipped downstairs and sank into the couch, away from the sight, the smell, the lingering echoes of her infidelity. And as much as my heart was breaking, my mind started working. A plan started forming in my head. Get him out first. Confront him. Strip him of his dignity. Throw him out back, naked. Then deal with Emily. No violence. No evidence. Just swift, undeniable humiliation. I had the perfect tool for the job. A couple of years back, during my time in the Army Reserve National Guard, I had been assigned to clearing out military vehicles. That's when I came across a stun grenade, a non-lethal device used in hostage situations. One flash at 8 million candle power, one deafening blast at 170 decibels, and anyone nearby would be momentarily incapacitated. I retrieved it from my workshop and made a quick modification, adding a rope loop for easy placement. Then, I headed straight for the bedroom. This time, I didn't bother staying quiet. The sounds coming from behind that door only fueled my resolve, my grip tightening around the grenade. I stepped inside, secured the rope loop to the light fixture, and let the device hang just above the floor. With a deep breath, I yanked the pin, shoved it into my pocket, and stepped back, pressing my hands against my ears and squeezing my eyes shut. Even with my lids closed, the blast was blinding. The shockwave rattled the entire house. My ears rang, my chest tightened from the force of it. But I was ready. I stormed back into the room, fully prepared to carry out my revenge. Instead, I froze. The man lay flat on his back, unmoving. Something was wrong. My gaze drifted lower, and that's when I saw it. Something missing. Emily was crumpled on the floor, her eyes vacant, lips trembling as if she were struggling to breathe. Confusion hit me like a sledgehammer. This wasn't the outcome I had planned. Not even close. I stumbled backward into the hallway, trying to make sense of it all. Whatever had just happened in that room, it was far worse than anything I had imagined. My thoughts were cut short by 2 blood-curdling screams, followed by a series of crashes and slamming doors. Reality set in fast. I was in serious trouble. My plan had completely backfired. Peeking inside, I saw the guy roll off the bed, clutching his groin and wailing in agony. Emily had disappeared, probably locked away in the bathroom. I needed to erase any evidence. I rushed back into the room, scanning for anything that could tie me to this disaster. My eyes landed on the detonator. Without hesitation, I secured it to the rope, making sure it blended into the wreckage. Everything else was already destroyed. Taking a deep breath, I stepped toward the bathroom. Emily was on her knees, hunched over the toilet, vomiting. I felt nothing. No concern, no guilt, not even anger anymore. Just emptiness. On my way out, something caught my eye. A small, soft lump on the floor. I bent down and picked it up. Warm, slightly spongy. And then it hit me. A severed tip of a tongue. Without a second thought, I carried it downstairs and flushed it. Whatever happened tonight, there was no way they were putting that back where it belonged. Silently, I slipped into the night. The distance between my house and the neighbors was enough to keep anyone from noticing my escape. Halfway to the garage, I emptied my pockets into a roadside trash can. 10 minutes later, I was back in my small work garage, chest heaving, mind racing. I grabbed my phone and called the only two people I trusted, Tom and Jerry. My guys, my grease-covered, oil-stained, dependable as hell employees. They arrived quickly, alarmed by my tone. Before they could even ask, I hit them with a request. I need you both to say I've been here for the last 45 minutes. Their response was immediate. Of course, boss. But I raised a hand. Wait. They needed to know what they were getting into. What I did tonight. It's serious. Once I tell you, you might not want to be involved. I don't even know what charges I could face. Jail time, maybe. Silence. I changed into my old overalls, using an oily rag to smear grease over my hands and face, preparing for what was coming. Then I laid it all out for them. Tom lasted about 15 seconds before he cracked. His shoulders started shaking, and then he burst into laughter. That set Jerry off. Before long, all three of us were howling, the absurdity of it all too much to contain. Took a full 5 minutes to calm down. With firm handshakes and reassurances of support, they headed back to work. Over the next hour, laughter kept spilling out into the garage, filling the space like the scent of motor oil. Emily was finally getting the consequences she deserved. That night, I went home and got to work. I scrubbed the bathroom floor, stripped the bed, tossed out the ruined sheets and made a mental note to buy a new rug. The curtains were wrecked too, they'd have to be replaced. I kept myself busy, but the constant knocking at my door and the endless ringing of my phone made it impossible to escape the reality of the situation. The media was already having a field day with this scandal. Infidelity, a brutal accident, and a man losing his manhood. It was the perfect storm. I answered the door once, then shut my phone off completely. For the first time that day, I sat down and let myself think. Did I regret what I did? Strangely, no. I had never been able to stomach cheaters. I had seen firsthand how betrayal turned people into someone unrecognizable. But the biggest shock? Emily. I had believed, without a doubt, that she was as devoted to me as I was to her. Our relationship had been solid, our intimacy had never been an issue until recently. And then, something clicked. 2 months ago, Emily had told me she was retiring to enjoy her last days of freedom. At the time, I had brushed it off, assuming she'd work for a few more months before pregnancy slowed her down. But now, that phrasing, one last celebration before kids, suddenly made my stomach turn. My personal cell phone buzzed, breaking my train of thought. Not many people had this number. I glanced at the screen. Emily's parents. They lived 3 hours away. I hesitated, then answered. I had always gotten along with them. Emily's mother didn't waste time on pleasantries. She got straight to the point. Do you know why journalists are swarming our house? She barely let me answer before continuing. They say we'll find out eventually, but... She hesitated, struggling to get the words out. Did you watch the news? They're talking about a woman who bit off her lover's dignity. I exhaled. Yeah, Mom. I know. She didn't need me to say anything else. The scream that tore through the phone was loud enough to make me pull it away from my ear. Then a sharp beep. The call had ended. I stared at the screen, my mind suddenly snapping back to something important. That morning, before stepping into the bedroom, I had left my phone recording outside the door. The pain was still raw, but if I didn't try to understand Emily's reasons, I knew I'd never trust another woman again. And if I couldn't trust, I'd end up a bitter, lonely man, consumed by resentment. So, desperate for answers, I hit play. I already knew what was on that recording. I didn't need to see it again. Eyes shut, I let only the voices fill my ears. The camera, left lying on the floor, had only caught the ceiling. Then I heard him. Emily, this past week has been amazing. Does it really have to end today? A pause. My offer still stands. Just say the word, and I'll divorce Lisa. We can be together. Silence stretched for a moment before Emily finally responded. No, it wouldn't work. What kind of start would that be? A marriage built on betrayal? A man who left his wife and kids. So you love Lisa that much? He asked. His voice was doubtful, mocking. Emily hesitated. Completely. From the moment I met him, I knew he was my soulmate. I want nothing more than to grow old with him, to die in his arms, surrounded by our grandchildren. A scoff. Really? Because he's not the one lying next to you right now. Another long silence. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, Emily admitted, I just missed the past. She sounded hollow, empty. I was wild before I met Ryan, she continued. I missed the feeling of walking into a bar and knowing I was wanted. The thrill of leading a man on, deciding if he got what he wanted or not. I clenched my jaw. Lately, Ryan's been going deer hunting every other weekend, she went on. 3 weeks ago, I decided to go out to a bar, just to see what it felt like again. A breath. One night turned into 2. And then last Saturday, I ran into you, and here we are. I shut off the recording. The problem had never been me. I had been a good husband, a good man. But Emily? She was just cold. The next few days passed in a haze of disappointment. By midweek, the reporters had finally packed up and left my street. That same day, the hospital administrator called, saying Emily needed pajamas. I ignored it. She could make do with those stiff, humiliating hospital gowns. 2 days later, her father reached out. He apologized on Emily's behalf, told me he hoped I'd stay in touch with the family. Then, as if he could fix things with a single gesture, he casually mentioned that he had another daughter. Recently divorced. Sorry, Dad. Not interested. Meanwhile, the media hadn't let up. Mr. Not-So-Big-Deal had been released from the hospital, but that wasn't the real headline. The journalists had done their jobs, digging deep enough to expose him as a serial cheater. The cherry on top, though surgeons had managed to piece his manhood back together, the general consensus was that it wasn't likely to function the same way again. It was poetic justice. By the end of the week, I had an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Carter, Lisa, as she insisted I call her, stood at my door. She was a pretty woman, though her eyes carried a sadness that felt familiar. I heard rumors that you might have evidence, she said softly. Something that could help in my divorce case. I didn't confirm or deny it. Instead, I told her the truth. If I exposed anything, I'd be exposing myself too. She nodded, apologizing for even asking. Still, something about her sadness struck a chord in me. I found myself wanting to do something for her. So I pulled up a video file, not the whole thing, just the aftermath. I hit play. The moment her husband's agonized screams filled the air, Lisa flinched. But she recovered quickly, her lips pressing into a firm, unreadable line. Let's just say that by the time she left, sadness wasn't the dominant emotion on her face anymore. And because I'm such a helpful guy, I told her she was welcome to come back anytime she needed a pick-me-up. That wouldn't be the last time I saw Lisa Carter. But the strangest visit came on Saturday. When I opened the door, I recognized the detective who had spoken to me at the house that first night. But this time he wasn't in a suit, just jeans and a shirt. Hey, son, he said, standing on the porch. No, I won't come in. Just wanted to let you know that, since there's insufficient evidence, I've recommended closing the case. I thanked him, but as he turned to leave, he hesitated. Glancing back at me, he added, Listen, I'm retiring at the end of the year. If I come by after that, will you tell me how you did it? I just smiled and wished him a good day. Then came Emily's letter. It arrived the following Tuesday. My dear Ryan, I can't express how ashamed and sorry I am for what I did to you. I understand why you haven't visited, and I forgive you, unconditionally. I never truly considered the full consequences of my actions. I never imagined my parents would actually disown me. I know I've lost your love, your trust, and your respect forever. That truth hurts more than I can describe. I will understand if you never want to speak to me again. But if it helps your healing, I would like to explain why I did what I did. Just know that it was all my fault. The doctors say I may never speak normally again. Apparently, when I bit down, I swallowed part of my tongue. They're considering some experimental stretching technique to restore function. I hope it works. At the very least, I need something, anything, to distract me from the dull, loveless, childless future I now face. Take whatever you want in the divorce. I'll sign anything. Just, if you could keep me on your health insurance a little longer, I would be forever grateful. Farewell, my love. I wish you nothing but happiness. I hope I haven't completely ruined your life. Your Emily, aka your cheating wife. The letter was so touching, so heartfelt, so deeply remorseful, that I immediately changed my mind. I sent her pajamas to the hospital. Now, where the hell were Tom and Jerry's numbers? Did I owe them a beer? Or an entire damn keg? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.